afternoon. Lovely to see so many of you here for the first session of Rezzed 2016. I'm Martin from Eurogamer. Without further ado, I'll pass you on to the star act for the first session. It's Erik Odeldahl, the design director of EGX Rezzed.
Hello, lots of people. Nice seeing you here. And bright lights. My name is Erik Odeldahl. I'm the design director on Mirror's Edge Catalyst. And I'm here today to talk a bit about the work that me and my team have poured into the game the last few years in the offices in Stockholm at DICE. The title of the inspiration, the title of the presentation is The Inspirations, but it's really about the values that we've tried to stay true to while building the game. So what guided us in all our decisions building it. So it's about faith and it's about the City of Glass. But before we get on into that, I'd like to start by showing you our trailer from last year's E3 to remind you a bit about the game if you haven't seen it for a while.
Peggy 16.
Every new day holds a promise. You can waste it, or spend it advancing yourself. A productive employee is a happy employee. Anyone can rise to a high caste level. Your possibilities are infinite. Personal freedom comes at a price. Be wary of policy breakers in our midst.
Faith, are you there?
Gotta run with Kruger, but I got something for it.
I'm taking her out.
This city is changing, and not for the better. Unless, of course, we stop it.
You, on the ground, now!
Come on, girl. Save us all.
Okay, so thank you very much. Let's go back to where it all began. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a follow-up to DICE's game from 2008, but it's not a direct sequel, it's not a prequel, it's a full reboot which builds on the gameplay and the themes and the aesthetics of the first game, but it tells a new original story about faith, about the runners, and about the conglomerate. So Mirror's Edge was released on PC, Xbox 360 and PS3 in 2008, 2009 actually for PC. And it features an awesome heroine, it features unique first-person parkour gameplay, a wonderful stylized aesthetic, and an amazing soundtrack by Solar Fields. And these were all things we wanted to build on for our game, but there were some things we felt we should do more with. Sorry. So the world in the first game is somewhat sparsely communicated to the player. So we don't really learn much about why runners are required in this world, or what the authorities actually do to suppress protests and stay in power. And this is something then that we set out to address in our new game. But we also wanted to give the player more freedom, more moves, and more spaces to play around in, or playing. And there were some questions we really wanted to answer. So who is Faith and why is she running? And what's the world like where she lives? So those questions, that's kind of where we started to guide us on our way. So when we develop games at DICE, we early on established the core pillars of the game. So, and those act like a touchstone during the whole development process. So how it basically works is if we work on something and it doesn't feed in to at least one of these pillars, then we should just stop working on it. It's not something we should spend more time on doing. And for Mirror's Edge Catalyst, we had 4 of these pillars. And the first one is the rise of a heroine. We wanted to tell Faith's origin story. How does she become a heroine? Why does she become a heroine? And it was really, really clear for us, early on, that we wanted to build a character that was a true heroine, someone who actually, stands up for those that can't fight back, or who fights back when everybody else has given up. Like a symbol of hope, a proper hero / heroine. So definitely no dark, cynical, brooding protagonist for us. Our second pillar, first-person action, Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst, both games that play out in first-person view. And so we wanted the player to experience Faith's story through first person, but we also decided to remove any obstacles that basically forces the player to stop. And the big one in this case is to remove gunplay from the game at all. Faith can no longer even pick up guns. The player doesn't have the option. So when fighting the Kruger-sec, the enemies of this world, you have to use your fists, feet and fists, and your momentum, the speed you build up as you're running. So we basically built the combat system into the movement. Our third core pillar is exploring the city of glass. We're building a city and we want the player to be free to explore it, to choose when to take on the next mission, or when to run a race, or when to just look around and see what they can find. And for this to be fun or rewarding for a player, the city has to live, it has to breathe, it needs a history, it needs a context for so it's not just an empty space. And our fourth pillar, the social playground, which I won't talk about that much today, but it's basically one of the main reasons that people still play the first game is that racing in Mirror's Edge is fun, and it's rewarding, and it's deeply, deeply based on how skilled you are as a player. And we really, really wanted that into this game. But we also wanted to put it into the city. So not necessarily create specific tracks, etc., for the player to do this. We wanted them to, compete, etc., in the city as they were playing through the story. Today, I'll be focusing mainly on the 2 of these core areas: the rise of a heroine and exploring the city of glass. So, take those 4 core pillars, and that gives us the foundation for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. But what it doesn't really do is tell us the emotion we were after. So if you make a game where you spend a lot of the time jumping from rooftop to rooftop, 200, 300, even 800 meters above the ground, there are 2 types of emotions you are likely to project. The first one is horror. The horror of falling down and just smack landing. A fall of 800 meters is probably not that much fun. The second feeling, which is the one we found a bit more interesting, is actually freedom. The freedom to go where nobody else will ever go, to see things that nobody else will ever see, to see a city from a viewpoint very, very few people see. So that's what we decided to go for there. If you take these core pillars, they all feed into this value to freedom. So, for instance, the first one, rise of a heroine. Movement is not necessarily, it's not what makes Faith a hero, but it's often how she expresses it, and it's what she can do that basically helps her. It's what makes her feel free. The second of these pillars, first-person action, in this case specifically then the fighting, the combat. If Faith wasn't as skilled a parkour or freerunner artist as she is, then the Kruger sect would fairly easily take her down and make her not free. Exploring the City of Glass, using Faith's quite extensive moveset, that's how you find your way around everywhere and anywhere within the city that we built. And finally then, the social playground, using the movement is basically how you can show off to your friends how extremely good you are. So in Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst, everything is about the movement. Every move you do is gameplay. You can't just point and run. You need to interact with the environment. And there's a skill to that, and that's a skill that we can't expect a player to know the first time they boot up the game. It's something that they learn over time. And that's also influenced heavily how we built the city, how you unlock the city, how that progresses for you. So over time, while playing the game, you will learn to read the architecture perfectly, we hope, even while running at max speed. So in the City of Glass, there isn't one randomly placed object. Everything you interact with has been placed there by an artist or a level designer. That's been quite a bit of work, but we really feel it's paid off. And also movement related, since we're bringing the player into a larger open space this time, it presented us with another demand. Since you can change your mind about where to go, often mid-move, we felt that the controls needed to be more responsive than they were in the first game. So what this means in practice is that in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, there is almost no moves that you can't immediately break out of, either by inputting up, the buttons for up or down, or one of the combat buttons on your controller or keyboard mouse. And not knowing where the player will be at a certain time in the game, or not even necessarily knowing where they want to go, we couldn't rely on the old style runner's vision system that we had in the first game. And I'm not sure how many in this room have played the first game. Can I quick show of hands? Quite a few. That makes me very happy. Runner's vision is, for those of you that haven't played it, it's a system that lights up objects in your path in red and basically guides you, tells you what you can interact with or where you need to go. And we still do that in our game. But we had to change the system, so now it kind of works like a GPS. So as long as you tell the game where you want to go, Runner's Vision will continually update and create a path for you to run. And we've added some other tools to guide you, such as you can see in this image. There's a red ribbon that shows you the way. And for those diehards that definitely don't want Runner's Vision or don't want the extra help, they can of course turn this off. But we feel that this system, it really helps the player to find their way around and choose what to do. And it gives them, once again, the freedom that we want them to have or feel. But there is, of course, a flip side to freedom. To feel free, there has to be something that threatens to lock you in. And in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, that is the city below you. And it's a city ruled by the conglomerate, 13 major corporations, each run by a family of kind. And the city is also kept in check by the private security forces of Gabriel Kruger, and Kruger runs one of these families, corporations. Faith's defining, outward-facing ability is her movement. So it's how she can get to places nobody can go to. But it's also the thing that restricts her, right? She can't go to places where everyone else is because she's an off-grid outlaw. And Faith and the player actually move in a completely opposite way than any other citizen in the City of Glass, or I guess how we move around. If we see a street, that we use streets to take us to where we want to go. But for Faith and for the runners, a street is something they can never use. It's always a river they have to cross. So they move exactly the opposite way than any other citizen in this world, and probably our own world, move around. And there's also the thing that if where you move around is the rooftops, and you've got the beautiful blue sky above you, when that is taken away from you, and in this case, this is a location you'll get to in the story, it's the old Omnistat tunnels below the city. That can be quite a claustrophobic experience for a runner like Faith. So I'm a lifelong science fiction reader, watcher, and I love how science fiction as a genre allows you to express ideas in a way that maybe wouldn't really work in a real environment. Science fiction creates a context where you can say things and you can investigate things and you can explore things without necessarily thinking about the real world right now. And as you might have seen from the screenshots, the footage, we have moved Mirror's Edge Catalyst into a slightly more science fiction environment than the first game. It's still recognizably real, we think, but it's a bit more sci-fi. So it's about, Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a game about the fight against oppression, against mass surveillance. And these are political issues that we read about, or everybody should read about, I think, every day. But we're telling a story that at its heart, at its core, is a hopeful story. And I don't necessarily think that the real world is the place to tell that kind of hopeful story all the time. Maybe that will change. But so that's why we've chosen to go a bit more sci-fi here. And the game is, of course, an entertainment product, right? We play games a lot of the time because we want to be entertained, we want to enjoy what we're doing. But that doesn't mean that the story we're telling can't or shouldn't mean anything. And telling a story where there is always hope means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the people on the team. So when creating this context then, and when we set out to build the City of Glass, the goal was, okay, let's create a believable dystopia where, it works, it makes sense, and everybody who plays it, might pick up on different things and different things from our reality. So we wanted the city to have texture, we wanted to have life, and for it to have life, it needed a history, basically the history of Cascadia. And there's some concepts here that we created to visualize that history for ourselves on the team. And Cascadia, which is the nation where the City of Glass is located, is a nation, and it's built on hope after a devastating civil war, but where the new rulers eventually ended up doing exactly what they fought so hard to get away from. So they didn't start out evil. They don't think of themselves as evil. They think of themselves as, of course, they're doing the right thing. So the history of Faith's world and how it ended up the way it is, it's partly told in the main story, but there is a lot more detail for the player who wants to explore, to find. So it's not something we push or force on the player, but if you spend the time exploring and figuring these things out, we hope, and I think, it really adds a lot to the enjoyment of the game. So here's some images from the modern city of Glass, which is, if you look at it, it's a beautiful place on the eastern coastline of the nation of Cascadia. And for Cascadians, it's a symbol of progress, where everything on the surface it's pristine, it's beautiful. But if you scratch that surface just a little bit, you're going to find the ugliness inside. And that's what we want to let the player do in this game. So, there you have it. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a game about freedom versus tyranny. It's a game about fluid movement versus angular and sharp architecture. And it's also about embracing your inner hero or heroine. But importantly, it's also about having fun, which I hope you'll have a lot of when the game is released in May 26th here in Europe. We're going to move on into Q&A. But before we do that, I'd like to show you our latest trailer. It was released in February this year. We call it the I Am Faith trailer, and it should hopefully start now.
I once knew a young woman who would defy anyone and anything in order to do what she felt was right. But you're clearly not her. You're broken.
Anything having to do with Gabriel Kruger, we need to stay miles away from.
Look, I thought that this would be a...
No, you didn't think, Faith. You never do.
Don't get lost.
Barely out of prison and already stirring things up. Your parents will be proud.
Mr. Kruger, he is out for runner blood. Whatever it is you stole from him must be very valuable.
If you keep this up, I swear you'll be dead in a month.
Using every weapon at our disposal. We've got to destroy it. Back off!
Kruger did this, and he'll be able to do it to anyone unless he's stopped.
Get out of my sight.
That's it?
What else is there?
You're wrong. I'm not broken.
Prove it.
So, there's a fighter in you after all.
We've got about 10 minutes for some questions. If you do want to ask a question, there's a microphone waiting for you just in the middle there, so just form a nice orderly queue, and hopefully we'll have time to get through a handful of them. While we're kind of waiting for people to step up, I guess I'll get the ball rolling. What did you really learn from the first Mirror's Edge? What were your kind of big, what did you take away from that for the sequel?
I'm not sure it is. Yeah. There, I can hear myself. What did we learn from the first game? People who have played the first game and play this, there's a lot to recognize. I think the the main thing we all felt as a team was that the first-person controls and the way you use them, the way you interact with the world, just screams to be used in a more open environment, and basically giving players more space and more time to actually experiment with that. I think that's the main thing. And also we wanted to tell a more involved, I guess, a bigger story. There's a bit more scale to the story in this game.
Yeah, if you do want to ask a question, there is a microphone just there. There we go, we have our first one too.
Good. Since it's like a first-person game, have you considered integrating any VR? I know it can be a bit jarring since you're like really speeding around, turning and stuff, but has it been considered?
I can't hear. No, yeah. Yes, I often actually get asked the VR question, and it's of course something we've looked at. And I don't know how many in here have experience with VR. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. But it also requires a very specific design mindset, I think. So I mean, we're looking at VR. DICE as a studio is looking at VR. But I think when you build something for VR, you really need to design a game for VR. And it's not something you can just patch on. It doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine a quicker way to get sick, basically, than playing Rezzed in VR. I'm sure it'd be fun. Next question.
Hi there. Thank you for the talk. I just wanted to ask your decision behind making it a reboot as opposed to a sequel, because choosing a reboot has connotations of, rather than an iterative sequel, of there are things that we liked about the original that we wanted to take into this, as opposed to a reboot, which is more of a clean slate. So can you maybe explain about how perhaps you're more self-critical on what the first game was like?
Yes. So the reason to start this, to do this as a reboot is we have several things. First of all, there's tons of stuff in the first game that we really liked, and there are characters, etc., in the first game that we really like, and that you might reckon if you read our comic, our prequel comic that we created for this, you're going to find characters such as Celeste in it. Also, just like Faith, like a redefined version of Celeste, etc. I think it's been quite a few years since the first game, and we just felt that we wanted to tell a different type of story. There were things we wanted to do. The world we wanted to build wouldn't necessarily stay consistent with what the world was in the first one, etc. So but we made really, really sure to, we stayed true to the themes, we stayed true to the aesthetics, the audioscape, everything about that game, and basically took all the great learnings from that and put it into this game. It was a way for us to basically create something, basically take some things off the table and just, here's the new thing, here's the thing we want to build, and be free to actually create that without always having to think about what went on in the first game.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Hi there. Is there any information you can tell us about the beta?
There will be information coming out very shortly about the beta. I can unfortunately not talk about that today. Sorry about that.
Thanks. Next question, please.
I really like this kind of concept, and it's actually quite similar to one of my concept arts. Sorry. Because I've begun to design a game that, I won't make the game, but at least drawings. And the main colors are also dark, black, white, and red. And it's about going inside a computer world and everything. I'm just, what things should I keep in mind when laying out ideas and concept?
Sorry, what? So I didn't catch the question, sorry.
Do you know what I should keep in mind when laying out my ideas for concept art?
Oh, I think when creating concepts for any game, I mean it takes a while. You know, the first ones you do. And to be super clear, I'm not an artist. You don't want to see my drawings. But what you do, I mean, it takes a while to get there. The first thing you create is not going to be how, what the thing that influences the rest of the game, the rest of the process. I think just as we explore gameplay or any mechanic while building a game, we don't know from, basically when we sit down at a computer, we don't know exactly what it is the first time. Use your concepts to explore and to find where you think where you want to go, and then refine that as the process goes. And then once you nail down the look, maybe in this case, of what you want to build, keep building on that and see experiment. So what would happen with this specific look that I created, but in a different scenario? A good example is actually from the presentation where the outer the above ground city of glass. It's white. It's got it's white and it's got the blue skies and it's got these big splashes of color. So how does that look when you go underground into something that is actually old and decrepit, etc.? It needs to look really different, but it also needs to be the same style, the same game. But I think we couldn't have built the underground without really defining what the above ground was first. Does that answer your question a bit?
Thank you.
Thank you very much and good luck with your game. Next question, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi then. We saw at the start of your presentation with the 4 pillars. Just under the social pillar, I'm just curious, what are you doing differently that you can talk about today than you are from the first game?
So we're going to be talking way more about social really soon. But what I can say today is that it is integrated into the movement around the city. As the city of glass is a city, it unlocks for you. You open up bigger and bigger parts of it that are open for you, and all the social play we have takes place in that environment. So it's not so much specifically designed tracks or specifically designed levels, but rather we tried to make it a part of the whole. And I'm afraid I can't talk more about social play today.
Yeah, it seems a lot can be done, so look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Hi, sir. You talked about all of the objects in the world having been deliberately placed by a level designer or an artist. One of the things I liked about the first game was how curated all the experiences were in terms of the levels. That they had a very clear flow, and some of them were more puzzly, some of them were more racy. Can you talk a little bit more about how you balanced the desire to give people those sorts of curated experiences versus just having to traverse the world?
Yes, absolutely. I think first of all that there is the slower, the more puzzle-based locations in both the first game, but definitely in this one, are usually, it's helpful for a player to recognize it as a puzzle space when they get to it. So they are very often in bigger interiors, bigger, slower paced thing. A big thing with us redesigning Faith as a character is that runners in this game they're cat burglars, they're high-tech thieves. So there is a fiction about breaking into stuff, breaking into places and finding your way around inside big buildings, etc. So that's the more puzzly sections are also, I'd say that they are more in bigger, more unique story context, right? There's a lot of puzzly sections out in the free roaming city as well, but they are also, we've tried to basically make sure that the player can always see that this is a puzzle thing. On the other hand, when you become a skilled Mirror's Edge player, you can traverse a puzzle section really quickly, way faster than you can do the first time. I personally found Mirror's Edge, the original game, way more fun the third time I played it, because I knew the spaces, right? And I could feel that the satisfaction of just breezing by a section that was actually really hard in the beginning. So that's also something, building an open a city that is open to free roam means you traverse the same sections quite a bit. And that was an intentional move from us. We want the player to actually backtrack that horrible word, right? We want them to move back and forth a bit, because they learn the environment and they find lots of the hidden fun that we put into it. You know, all the shortcuts, all the, you know, those things that aren't obvious the first time you puzzle your way through a section, suddenly becomes, oh, they placed that thing there to make, you know, shave off 2 or 3 seconds in one of, you know, whatever it could be. So I think that's, we basically try to make each area fun to puzzle or race your way across multiple times.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you very much. Got time for 2 quick questions then. Thank you very much.
Hello. My question is, you've talked quite a bit about the story of Mirror's Edge,
yes.
And I was just wondering, once you've finished the story, what sort of other things are going to make you come back to keep playing the game?
I think once you finish the story, the city is it has a lot of side missions, a lot of other smaller types of objectives you can do, a lot of other puzzles, collectibles, and I think the main thing that pulls me back after having played this game for a couple of years in different shapes and forms is that it's still fun to explore. It's still fun to find those, you know, the new ways to move around the city, and basically it's just as I'd say that just as you compare it to a shooter, right, where you can always become a better online player, etc. There is always that, even in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, to come back and improve and become a better player. There is a skill element to the game where you can just, you know, really. There's a lot of personal satisfaction for me to just become better and better at it. But it's quite a large space to explore and find fun in. So I hope lots of people will keep coming back for a long time.
I'm looking forward to playing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
One last question. Thank you very much.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask your opinion on like the design process that you've got behind Faith, the main character, because she's kind of like a huge inspiration. I sort of have, I just really adore the attitude that she has, and anything from her ethnicity to the way she is around the world, and like you see in the Exodium comics and stuff like that. I wonder if you could talk more about who she is and why she is the way she is, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, Faith, we have updated Faith's look a bit from the first game, but there were some things we really didn't want to deviate from. I mean, she's white, black, the red glove, like you said, the ethnicity. Difficult word there. And those are parts of who she is, and it's a part of her. I mean, we are showing in this game a bit more about where she comes from, her, you know, upbringing, who her parents were, etc. I don't want to spoil too much, but that, I mean, Faith is, like I said, she's an inspiring character. She's always been that. Too.
Very unique as well.
Yeah. So I mean, she is like, yes, movement is the core of everything in Mirror's Edge Catalyst, but so is Faith. There can be no Mirror's Edge Catalyst without Faith.
Absolutely.
So I think it's what we've tried to do is basically we treat the way she was portrayed in the first game with respect, and then updated parts of her personality and maybe explored other parts of it just at a greater depth. Because like I said, we wanted to find out who she is and what made her the way she is. She doesn't start out as the heroine in this game, right? But she becomes one. And that's like the journey we wanted to bring the player on. You know, how do you go from somebody who is already, you know, a fairly skilled runner? You know, what happens to make that person take a stand? And quite a few things happen.
Sure thing, yeah. Really excited for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all your great questions, and thank you so much for your time, Erik. And there is another session straight after this. If you're dying light, if you do want to come and see that, you have to go out and queue back up to come back in again. But yeah, thank you very much, and hand to Erik, please.
Thank you.